they made a unilateral decision as they said the words environmental racism or environmental justice, speaking against environmental injustice, as they said those words to get elected, to get our hopes up, to get our smiles and our hearts feeling like it was going to be peaceful. They made a unilateral decision on Memorial Day weekend to impose these permit regulations and fast track these things. So does anybody want to think about, have you ever looked in the newspaper and they tell you about how these Congress and senators had to get home on Friday to the golf course so they couldn't pass a federal funding bill? You've seen those, right? But to beat us, or to think they beat us, they met on a Saturday and Sunday of Memorial Day weekend to flip the rules that they made that we won. So I want to go back to the history of this idea that these folks got. This democracy that they call it in their colonized language is an indigenous principle. And I'm not going to say that indigenous people didn't have our share of conflict. But you know what? We don't honor the stories of our wars. We honor the stories of how we made peace. One of those makings of peace was a confederacy of 5, now 6 nations, but those nations adopted many nations that they were trying to pick off. They actually adopted my wife's Okanichi-Saponi Tutelo Nation and brought them up to sanctuary in Canada in the 1700s. But those nations, before it was actually colonization and genocide and brutalization, when it was just fair, peaceful trade, they had something that they had founded for generations called the Great Law of Peace. The colonizers heard of such a thing and said, we want to steal that and make it ours, so that we're different from that European monarchy that we ran from in Europe. Now they stole everything, but you know what they left out? The most principal concepts of the Great Law of Peace. The women's voice is not only important, but the elder women, the clan mothers, the great-grandmothers get the last word. The other principle is that the most vulnerable of our communities gets a word. The sick, the ones with less things, the poor, if you will. But we didn't have those words because none of our people were poor. But those that were vulnerable in the community got to sit in there with the council and have their voice heard and appreciated and respected. So they stole this thing called democracy, and they said, we're going to take all the good things, but we're going to keep it only to white men. So no disrespect to my white male brothers, but we've had how many hundreds of years of white old men failing? I believe it is time for some new ideas, some new concepts, and not just bringing up our non-European descendants, giving them a suit, giving them a little bit in their pocket, and turning them into colonizers.
Yeah, they didn't even talk to that guy.
We don't need that. We need our idealistic young people that have values, that don't honor things like money and things and capital and consumption. They don't need to go to the fast track and get their burger made in 30 seconds because they remember how much better the food is when grandma takes hours to make it.
Were all of those police cars there before?
We need people with those values. We understand that all of us are two-legged human neighbors.
They're just like,
I've got descendancy from 3 of the so-called racial classes that I don't even believe in. But I say Achatasia because that language was illegal to be spoken to many of my generations. So I've been asked to sing a song that was just kind of like, I gotta educate you before I sing this song, because it's a song that united the American Indian movement, but a lot of people have a bad concept of that. They think it's an organization that just came together in the 70s after watching the Black Liberation Movement out of prisons, out of poverty, out of alcohol and addiction victory, and got us our religious rights and cultural rights back. If you have ever been in an AIM meeting, they will say, no, it's not an organization, it's a spiritual movement that has been going on since our first ancestor was brutalized. However long ago, you do the math. So in the spiritual movement, like I said, you all are all being subject to plantation and reservation politics, because that was the plan all along. So this is actually a unity song. I'm allowed to sing it because I do run in a circle in North Carolina called the 17 Rivers chapter of the American Indian movement. But again, it's not an organization. It's a spiritual movement. It's a sober movement. It's a justice movement. So I'm going to sing it, if I can, because my voice is going. And just know that our songs are not performances. When we pray with these songs, they're from the heart. So do not judge my voice, judge my heart. So there's another song we're going to sing. It's the Leonard Peltier song. Yes. And I don't care what you've heard of Leonard Peltier. These young men, these young indigenous men formed this justice organization out of prisons. Yes. These young men went to boarding schools. These young men experienced physical abuse, emotional abuse, and most worstly, sexual abuse. Yes. And these men found their voice in their 20s, coming out of their prisons and out of the addictions. And so if you want to judge any of them, if you want to judge any black liberation movement, if you want to judge brown berets, the so-called Southern brother, but they're indigenous brother movement, if you want to judge the Asian brothers, if you want to judge the poor white brothers that knew that the race thing was a lie from the concept, do not judge these people. It is poor people that lead us to justice, as we can see.
Yes.
Well, oh, hey, hey, oh. Well, oh, hey, hey, ah. Well, oh, hey, hey, ah. Way, hi, ah. Oh, well, oh, hey. Well, oh, hey, hey, ah. Way, hi, ah. Oh, well, oh, hey. Well, oh, hey. Well, oh, hey, hey, ah. way low, hey, ah, way high, ah, oh, way low, hey, way low, hey, ah, way high, ah, oh, way low, hey. So I'm going to complete with something that I need you to also understand. Protection of our water was always given the responsibility to our women. Not that we all don't have that relationship to water, but our women have a direct, divine relationship between the water that they carry our two-legged selves in. And so even though I have the loudest masculine voice, even though that's powerful in our colonized system, all I serve is to protect these women who reminded us of this movement to protect this land, this air, and this water. So with that, I'm going to ask Sophia, my relative, my indigenous relative, to have some words, because I think I've said enough. Thank you.
That was unexpected. So my name is Dr. Sophia Marjanovic. I am Oglala Lakota from the Fort Peck Oceti Sakowee tribe. And the reason I have been in the DC area on and off since 2007 is because my community has never had clean water. And it has been due to oil drilling since the 1950s. The top killer of our women in our community is cancer. Babies are born blue in my community, and children are always sickly. I don't, it's living here in the DC area, it's hard often because there's so much wealth here that I don't think people realize what it's like when children don't have the ability to even thrive with their health because they're always sick due to the fact that the water comes out of the faucet red, yellow, orange. It smells like petroleum and it has oil droplets floating atop it. And it's hard being out here, often by myself. I am Two-Spirit, and it was recognized when I was young that I was not entirely feminine. And so I've done a lot to sacrifice to ensure that my community gets heard and represented in places that they don't have the privilege that I have in order to access. And that privilege, unfortunately, is due to the fact that my parents were able to assimilate a little bit better than other people. So I've been out here in the DC area on and off since 2007. I got my PhD in immunology and microbiology from the National Institutes of Health and George Washington University. And the whole reason I did that was so that my community could get accountability for the fact that the polluted water has had an adverse impact on our community. As a scientist, I can tell you that the studies that have been done regarding oil drilling and these pipelines, it leads to disproportionate amounts of cancer in our communities, regardless of whether or not what color your skin is. You have an adverse impact or an adverse, you're adversely impacted by the oil drilling. The other thing I want to say is thank you to the people who sacrificed back there, who are putting their bodies on the line so that we could have clean water. And so that our children and grandchildren and generations beyond can have clean water. The reason why I do any of this, the reason why I sacrifice and deal with isolation oftentimes in colonial spaces is because I have an obligation as an Oceti Sakowee person to ensure that I'm acting as a good ancestor to generations I will never meet. And this country has taken so much from us. They've taken our land, so let's also acknowledge that we are on Piscataway and Pamunkey and various tribes here I've forgotten. This is their land. And so what I ask of you, because I know the environmental movement still has a lot of growth to do, is when you are in your meetings, make sure you look around and see who's not there. And if you're not seeing the indigenous people on whose land you're occupying, if you got to, reach out to me. I will hook you up. Because we cannot continue to act in colonial ways without including the people and building relationships and being good relatives to the people on whose land we're occupying. Even me, as a Lakota person out here on Piscataway land, I am an occupier of their land, and I have a responsibility and an obligation in order to build relationships with them to ensure that I'm being a good relative to them. So make sure you're doing that in your movement spaces when you go home. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Everybody. I didn't plan on coming up here today. I was just very moved by everybody that has spoken. I just wanted to first say thank you to my Indigenous brothers and sisters who have been here on the front lines since the theft of their country and their land, who have been fighting for the environmental justice that they deserve. I wanted to speak about, when we're talking about environmental justice, the main people that are affected are Indigenous and Black and Brown people, because we are the ones that are left behind. We aren't the ones that can get into those rooms and get into those offices and let our voices be heard. So we need to listen to the people that have been on the front lines since the beginning of the founding of this country and hear what they're saying. Cities like Flint, back home, are very affected by climate inaction. Because climate isn't just changing. It's happening due to inaction from politicians and from corporations and from people with the money that are trying to get into these politicians' office and do what they want to do for their own, to line their own pockets. And when we're speaking about politicians, there's been a lot of talk lately about how certain things are affecting the kids. How drag queens are affecting the kids, how the queer community is affecting the kids. I don't think that drag queens are stopping kids from going outside and breathing. If we're speaking about protecting the kids, we need to speak about gun control. We need to speak about protecting the environment. We need to think about letting people know about the history of this country, not calling it critical racism. It's not critical racism, it's history. It's the history of how this country was founded. I think politicians are doing everything for the greed. They're doing everything for greed, and they're not doing anything to help the people that got them into office. If you're elected into office by the people, you are meant to serve the people. That's really all I have to say. I wanted to lead a chant in the words of Assata Shakur. So just like repeat after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains. I'm not gonna lie, y'all, Biden can't hear you. I said we have nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Kathy Ferguson and I'm the Executive Director of Our Future West Virginia, a grassroots organizing organization in West Virginia. I like to say woo sometimes, but with our leadership, it's like, oh hell no. When I used to live in DC, I used to go to a grocery store called Trader Joe's. When I moved to West Virginia, I realized there was a thing called Trader Joe. And that would be Joe Manchin. I have been up here for every issue that affects human lives and capital in West Virginia. Bodily autonomy, Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP benefits. You name it, I've been up here fighting the good fight because these are things that affect everyday people. Every single time he has turned his back, every single time he has been a blocker of something that is good and important, he is so in bed with the corporatists, it's not even funny. We have a state that has been beholden to extractive industries for generations. We've provided $1 trillion to the economy, and yet we are still the poorest, or one of the poorest states in the country. Make that make sense to me, please. With regard to the Mountain Valley Pipeline, I have complete empathy. I don't live right in proximity to where that will be running, but I certainly live in a sacrifice zone. It's been a zone where Senator Joe Manchin personally sent representatives to ask us to vote to make sure that he got into office. We did that. That's why he's in office today. And yet, he has not been back to the same community since. He has turned his back on us. We are living in an environmental sacrifice zone. We are dealing with chemical pollution with the highest rates of ethylene oxide, which is a petrochemical derivative in the country, in our state. In the country. And meanwhile, our elected president, Joe Biden, he's tried to fight a good fight by advancing all these environmental justice for all acts to talk about communities and how we need to repair them and remediate some of the issues that have been caused by different environmental injustices. And yet he allows this MVP backroom deal to go through, creating even more sacrifice zones. So it's not just I'm living in a sacrifice zone, our whole state is a sacrifice zone. And I say no more Joe. No more Joe. No more Joe. I'm going to hand it off to the next person. Thank you all for listening. Lift up our stories. No MVP.
Hey everyone! We are going to start wrapping up this amazing rally. Our final speaker will be Callie, who comes to us from Richmond, Virginia. But before that, a few logistical things. After you hear from Callie, we invite you to turn your attention towards the people who are risking arrest for some final words from them, and then we'll all go home and take care of our lungs. I'll pass to Josh for a quick note on buses.
Yeah, let's proceed that quick note on buses with another held no Joe and a hand for Kathy Ferguson from West Virginia. Hand for Kathy. And a big hell no Joe. First for Joe Biden. 1, 2, 3. Hell no Joe. And another for Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin. 1, 2, 3. Hell no Joe. All right, Virginia folks, if you came from Virginia on a bus, join my friend Crystal Mello here, who's standing right behind me. And it may be time for you to start get going so you can get back home in one piece, nice and safe. So, and thanks for coming all the way up. Follow the drum and follow Crystal.
Thank you, everybody. I love y'all so much.
And when Crystal asks for a favor, you take her seriously, all right? This woman spent a little bit of time in a tree along the MVP route, stopping construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline in Alliston, Virginia. Just a little bit of time up there, the elephant tree sits. And it might be a good time to acknowledge, too, that this fight, which has lasted almost 9 years now, is, it's solidarity building, but there's so many different folks doing so many different things, and we would not be here without the folks who have been putting their bodies on the line to stop construction starting in February 2018, and we like to just give a little special love for them. All right, we're gonna turn it back to Denali here and Callie as well.
And remember to look over there after Callie speaks.
Hello, my name's Callie. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. This is my friend.
That one's not on. Hi, my name's Kiana Von Knight. I am also from Richmond, Virginia.
So many amazing things have been said. There's not much I can add. I just want to come to say that Sorry, I did not prepare what I was going to say.
You got this.
We are fighting to avoid a future that is horrifying and scary and that scares me. I'm 14. I know that that's terrifying, but we're also fighting to build a positive future. We're not running away. We're not running away. We are fighting to build something new, because this country was built on stolen land and broken promises, but we have a chance to build a utopia. We can build a world that we want and that we deserve. And we deserve that hope. We deserve the hope for a future that isn't just okay, isn't just safe, isn't just livable, but is beautiful and wonderful and free. And so we have to actively build that hope every day. We're not here out of fear. We're here because we deserve better, and we deserve a utopia. Thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to turn it over to the folks who are risking arrest back there. Give it up for them.
When the earth is under attack, what do we do? When the earth is under attack, what do we do? When the earth is under attack, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here to risk arrest and putting your bodies on the line for those on the front line, showing that we are all affected by the climate crisis. Nobody can say the climate crisis is not a threat to everybody. So today, what we see here in DC with the smoke and with the heat, that is one day of what folks on the front line live with every single day. Every day. So thank you so much for coming here, for those in the front line that have made their way all the way to DC. Thank you to those of you from DC and the communities around here standing with those in solidarity with the front line. Thank you so much. We're going to give it here over to hear from some of the people who are standing here today, putting their bodies on the line for the front line. Thank you. We see you. We love you. Thank you. We see you. We love you. Over to you.
Hey everybody. I'm Carol Muffett. I'm with the Center for International Environmental Law, but I'm here today on my own. And I'm here today in solidarity with the communities on the front line of MVP. But it's time to acknowledge that when the very air we breathe from New York to North Carolina is toxic to us, we are all on the front line.
Right. Yes.
When you can't insure your house in California because of fires, or in Florida because of floods, we are all on the front line.
Yes. Right.
When you can't rebuild your house in Texas or Louisiana from one storm before the next storm comes, we are all on the front line.
Yes.
In 1988, Senator Joe Biden spoke at the first major Senate climate hearing on climate change, and he said, "It is time to act." In 1990, Senator Joe Biden said the world needs a strong climate treaty urgently.
Shame. Shame.
Where is that Joe Biden?
Shame.
Approving MVP is not that Joe Biden. Pushing fossil fuels and oil and gas down the throats of communities is not leadership. It is not climate justice. It is not environmental justice. It is not justice of any kind.
That's right.
And it will not stand, Joe.
Right.
And it is not just us. We are here like millions of people around the world and hundreds of thousands of Americans across the country, and we are standing up and we're saying no to MVP, no to fossil fuels, no to the climate emergency, and yes to to environmental justice, and it's time for you, Joe, to deliver.
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Are we still angry? So let's make sure he hears it. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? And if we don't get it, shut it down. 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 And that's exactly what we will do. We will continue to come back and take the streets until Joe Biden understands that we are serious about saying no to any more new fossil fuels. My name is Vanessa Agudelo. I'm coming here from the city of Peekskill in the state of New York. And Peekskill is an environmental justice community just like many of the communities that some of the folks are coming here from. And Peekskill is also home to the only site in the country where we have a now decommissioning nuclear power plant sitting on top of fracked gas pipelines. That's right. So we are no stranger to being a sacrifice zone. And that's why I came to DC to say no to MVP, to say no to fossil fuel infrastructure, and to say no to communities continuing to be sacrificed for the sake of corporate profits. This is about corporate greed. So we must ask President Biden, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of corporate greed? Or are you on the side of the community, of the well-being, of humanity? We need to continue to make our message heard, so I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for being here, because we must continue to fight. We must continue to advocate. We must continue to take the streets, because this is our planet, this is our democracy, and we need to continue to make our voices heard to make sure we stop any new fossil fuel from happening, especially the MVP. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. The time has come to part ways, but not for long. We will need you in Appalachia to continue to fight this pipeline. Please follow Appalachians Against Pipelines on social media. Stay in touch with 7 Directions. Stay in touch with the Power Coalition. We need you more than ever. We are going to stop this pipeline. We do believe we will win, and we do believe we will secure the livable future we deserve, and we'll all do that collectively. We so appreciate everything you have given today. We appreciate all our folks willing to risk arrest, and we will see you very soon. Thank you, everyone, and this is the end of the rally.
Stay here, I'll stay with you.